Hello everyone, it's the Sky Priestess and welcome to this live video. Now I am as usual going to give a minute for people who are online to pop on and so that they can join us and we can have a little bit of an audience. Otherwise I can just jump into things and you can catch the replay anyway. So let's just give them a minute, see who pops up. In the meantime, I'll just tell you what I'm going to tell you in short summary. Now, as you know, I published a large article, or I should say a long-ass article on Thereus and Nessus and their deadly dance in this month, February 2023. And for those of you who want more information, you need to get to my website, theskypriestess.com, and you click on body of work to find it. It's the topmost one. I have also shared the article on the community pages here so you can revisit that. So for those of you who want more information on what I'm going to be talking about, I urge you to read the article because it's really easy to get sensationalized based on an idea of what someone is saying as opposed to what they're actually saying. And of course, right on point, right on cue, Josh has decided to epitomize Thereus, whom we will be talking about today. But just give me a second because his poor little sister is getting things happening to her which we don't really want. So just give me a second. Oi, get off your sister. Oi, Josh, stop biting her. So as you know, Josh is the male representative of, oh good God. Thank you. Come girl. As you know, Josh represents Thereus very often and he gets very triggered when I talk about it. So that was just an introduction. So we are going to be talking about Thereus and Nessus, but we're also going to be talking about different potentials that the month can offer. So as you can hear from little Ariel screams, these are things to take note of. Meanwhile, let's just see who is here. I see Sheena is here. I see Adrienne is here. I see Sabina is here. Good to see all of you. And without further ado, let's get started. And thank you for the patience. Okay, move along, Josh. Come on, Josh. Auntie has to work. What are you doing? Come. Give me a sec while I just move my little girl to safety, as that is part and parcel of all of this. And I'll be with you shortly. Oi. You come here. Oh, jeez. Okay. All right. Okay, here we go. Hey everyone, this is Ariel. Ariel is very small and she's cool. Her brother Josh is very naughty. Having said that, let's get to work. Ariel, you're going to be sitting here while I work. Okay, it's the easiest way I can do this. So, as I mentioned in the article, Thereus and Nessus are effectively energies that are not particularly nice. They are not particularly nice. They are energies that challenge us very often. They are energies that bring up areas of vulnerability which we need to look at. So these kinds of energetic back doors very often are things that can make us ill, things that can make us feel vulnerable, things that can put us in relationships and soul contracts that are not very satisfying. And for some people, not for everyone, but for some people, Thereus placements can lead to severe injury, even death, which is why I don't play around when I talk about this. So Thereus in Virgo reminds us to look at the back doors that we have in our everyday lives, in our nutrition, in our food, in our gut, in what it is that makes up our everyday living routine. And this is being opposed in this month by Nessus. Nessus is the abuser's asteroid. It has a lot to do with the lack of consent, domination, sexual abuse, and that fellow is sitting in Nessus. Josh, don't you dare. Don't you dare, Josh. No. So Nessus in Pisces brings up similar themes of vulnerability, but things that we can really see in the dream state, things that come up through meditation, through deep spiritual work, and things that normally come up as part of patterns of life lessons and life cycles. Now again, this is not going to be super relevant for everyone. No alignment is super relevant for anyone unless yeah, for everyone, unless it is something as big as Pluto shifting into Aquarius or the nodes shifting, something that affects everyone collectively. But for people who are spiritual seekers, for people who are looking for healing, for people who are healers, for people who are trying to explore what their souls have experienced in previous incarnations, this is a very big deal. And in the article, I also give you the other dates, specific dates where this opposition goes exact. So this is a big part of the backdrop of 2023. Does it mean, or rather February 2023 specifically, we'll see the same thing again in August, and we'll see it continuing next year and so on as well. But for this month, I know it's Valentine's, I know people want to celebrate love and so on and so forth, but the universe usually has other plans. And you can still do that as long as your relationships are actually ones that support finding spaces of security, that support energy exchange that is sustainable, that support healing that is mutual. If your relationships do that, you got nothing to worry about. But if you are in things that drain you, things that bind you, things that don't allow you to actually be who your essence actually wants you to be, then you're going to have a problem. And that's a lot of people. I mean, a lot of the times when I was writing about this as part of my K23 work, a lot of the times when it comes to healing, people resist it. And I'm not the first person to talk about this by any means, because for me, Carolyn Miss was the first person that I encountered really talking about this in a systematic way, and she talked about it as the concept of woundology. You can look up her book on why people don't heal and how they can. But a lot of the times, people talk about wanting healing, but they keep going on that same experience of life again and again and again. They get resentful, they get burnt out, they keep asking themselves, what have I done wrong? And someone then tells them, oh, it's your karma, you have to suffer, this is it, that's life. And it's not very fulfilling. And people just kind of go, oh, okay, that's my lot in life, this is what I have to keep doing. This is the old way. But as part of what is emerging into the now, and has been emerging for several decades, we're just more conscious of it right now. As part of what has been emerging into the now, we need to be looking at why healing certain patterns, why dissolving certain patterns where appropriate becomes so difficult. And it is often not because of, the person's lack of trying or lack of wanting. It is also because of the fact that people forget we do not exist as individuals. Yes, there's Thereus, yes, there's Nessus, but for things to happen, there needs to be an interaction. So and of course, it's easier to say, hey, everything is within yourself. You got to look at your own shadow. Yeah, that's not wrong. Absolutely. Yes, of course, it's not wrong. That's very, very true. But it's also very blasé. So this month, as you are trying to figure out what needs to be fixed, what needs to be healed, what needs to be dissolved, what needs to be made tighter, you got to look at what are the relationships that actually hold these patterns in place. There could be marital relationships, there could be a casual fling, there could be, as long as something that you actually have put some emotion and investment of energy into. It could be your long-term friendships, it could be contracts at work, it could be soul level contracts. Whatever it is, look at what holds this pattern in your life. And when you start looking at the structure of energy as embedded in relationships that leads you to particular cycles, you will then have a better picture of your role in all of this. And that's a big reminder that is coming up here. And it doesn't just apply to relationships in terms of love or in terms of intimacy. It also applies to all kinds of relationships, which include your relationships with your guides, your relationships with your ancestors, your relationships with your family members, your relationships with what you understand as God, Goddess, divinity. All of these need to be looked at. And if you are a facilitator and if you keep hitting yourself or against the wall, even though you're trying so hard, then these are the places that you really, really need to be looking. The problem is, and this is why I can't talk as often as I would like to, because there's a heck of a lot of resistance that comes up when someone actually gets exposed to my energy, because they look at what they have thought was truth, and then they go back and they sit down and they go, oh shit, this was BS the whole time, wasn't it? Now, as I have mentioned in the past many times, whatever ideas of God, religion, tradition, culture, philosophy, and so on that we have. Even nationhood, it is an idea. Even ethnicity, it is also an idea. It gets reified by certain ideas. So if we look at all of these ideas as ideas that we have imbibed at certain points in our spiritual journey, we can also see the baggage that they carry. Very often, the belief system of a person following a particular path is precisely the reason why they do not move past certain cycles. Even though they may really cherish this belief system, they may have devoted all of their resources to it, they may absolutely swear by it, and yet it is the system itself that holds the back doors. And for people who have more esoteric issues, you really need to be looking at the level of the system itself as a form, as a frequency of energy that you encounter through your, whether it's worship, whether it's healing modality, whether it's just composite of all beliefs that you have. And this is the scary part for so many people. Because what happens if you realize that what you believe actually recreates the wound, and to let go of the wound, you need to let go of what you thought was right. What happens then? A blank space is created, relatively speaking. Obviously, you're still going to have your traumas, your experiences, but in a certain way, there is this opportunity to recreate yourself. And it's easy talking about rebirth. It's easy saying, I just want to start everything over. But it's also terrifying. And that kind of ego loss is also one of the reasons why people do not heal as fast as they can, or people do not close certain back doors as easily as they can, even though they have the tools for it. And that is something that you only find out when you look within, and if you can't figure it out, look at the relationships, contracts, or agreements you have held that keep this energy and keep these patterns cycling over and over again. Now, because this is important information, and you know what I'm like, I will share what I can with you. If it is super important, if it is life-changing, I'm definitely going to talk about it. So let me give you a list of what I have identified as fairly red flag days for the month of February. You can get a lot more information if you join my Tier 23 program. Just ask them, they're flooded with information, but they're used to it now. But these are what I would really identify as red flag days. It can come up as spiritual vulnerability, physical vulnerability. Like I said, it can be quite extreme for people, especially if they have very sensitive planets that are, say, between 14 to 17, could actually call it between 12 to 17 of the mutable signs in particular. If you've got Mars, if you've got Venus, if you've got Pluto or Saturn, anywhere between 12 to 17 of Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, Virgo, you need to pay a lot of attention. So let me just get you those dates, and that will kind of give you a little bit of a heads up which days you need to exercise more caution on. Now, this is assuming that you are the person caught in the cycle which you don't really want to be in and are normally caught holding the shit end of the stick. These same dates are going to be fantastic for people who like perpetuating abuse. Now, no one wants to be called out as an abuser unless there's something really wrong with them, psychologically speaking. So, but there, of course, those kinds of energies are going to be stronger for people who thrive off parasitism. So, the opposite applies for them. The dates involved are 7 to 9 February, February 15th, February 18 to 19, February 21st, or 21, and February 27th. I'll repeat. So 7 to 9, so 7, 8, 9, 15, 18, 19, 21, 27. These are dates where I want you all to be extra, extra cautious with the energies that you let in, or the energies that you take in, assuming you're on the other side of the abuser victim spectrum. Now, here's a sad thing that I have seen, and I have to say it is very sad. Like, sometimes people go batshit crazy around me. And, I might have a perfectly lovely, sane, 3D exchange with the person saying, hey, everything's nice, everything's wonderful. And yet, the crazy gets triggered. And the reason for this is that what I do and what I teach and what I share by virtue of being myself is something that shows people a path of spiritual work and spiritual awakening that doesn't require parasitism and that allows you to be embodied in yourself and to be okay with that and to realize you don't need to be anything more than that because it's all inside here anyway. And frankly, that should be the goal of any spiritual teacher. But when it comes to me, some people go extra crazy because very often when a person has a high degree of spiritual or psychic ability, there are more often than not multiple aspects of their incarnation that still exist, almost as separate entities, but they're still linked to the whole. And those energies are the ones that are still holding or controlling these patterns. So I had to deal with this as I think as far back consciously I was dealing with this in 2014. I had to come up against, I think still one of the most terrifying experiences of my life was looking at what I was in a past time. And I had to look at that energy because I could see it still had an influence in the present. And this was, way before this work really became the focus of my life publicly. And thankfully, I've been long enough around to go, you know what, this is BS. I just want to go up. But I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that night. But I've noticed it in so many people who do not remember who they were, that there are parts of them very invested in the old ways of parasitism, which is one of the hallmarks of the age of Pisces. Yes, compassion, but also a lot of martyrdom and suffering, which often involves the innocent. And those are the people who kind of go batshit around you, even if their 3D selves are perfectly fine. So if you actually find a very strong reaction to someone who is saying something like what I'm saying, and you don't know where it's from and you don't know why it is, chances are there is an aspect of your past incarnations that is very much opposed to being in the here and the now. And that is stuff that people don't tell you. Because it is absolutely possible for that aspect of you to have diverged so strongly from who you are in the here and now that it actually has an adverse influence on you. It's not some great celestial law of karma, it's just an unintegrated, overly differentiated, fragmented sense of self. And that is part of the work I do when it comes up with clients. So this stuff, Thereus, doesn't mean there's something out there with a big. For some people, yes, that will be the case. But more often than not, you got to be with you and yourself. That's about. And we are back. Hopefully, continue to look at the dates given as an opportunity to look into that will benefit. That's what I'm doing. I don't tell you to do anything that I wouldn't do. I've already done all of this stuff, and I keep doing it because it's part of the work. The more you uncover, the more you will actually be able to integrate and to let go of what you need to let to go. Very often, you will actually then be able to say, who am I in the here and now? And that is true power. That is the only kind of power that we need to be aiming for in the present. The energy of embodiment, that who we are in the here and now is how we choose to navigate our road and not something else that's however many millennia old in the background. That is the only real power that we need. We don't need anything external. Obviously, helpful beings can always help us, but we don't actually need them to power us up, some kind of cabas on steroids. We are already enough. But saying it is one thing. Doing it in facilitation or doing it for yourself in deep meditation is an entirely different issue. And this is a reason why I'm talking about this a bit more so today is because Nessus is in Pisces. So a lot of this is going to do with the past life stuff. It's going to come up in dreams. It's going to come up in feelings you can't really quite put your finger on. And that's not something to fear. Interestingly enough, that of course this article had to drag out a troll, and I did write about it on my channel. She found it so negative and da 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 da, and I responded the way I needed to respond. But the truth is, this is only a negative encounter if you choose to see it that way. Thereus is not fun. I will never say it's fun. I will never say it's something I'd want to inflict on anyone. nor is Nessus. But if you actually look at it as an opportunity to heal and acknowledge the parts of you that you have not healed and acknowledged, then it's empowerment. See what I mean? So that's the way I have, that's the way I see it. That's the way I basically live through it. And that's the energy and message that really needs to come through. Now, are some people going to freak out? Absolutely, because they're not going to know what's hitting them. And when you run on an unconscious script, it is more likely for other energies to try and influence you. That is why in the article, which I have shared on the YouTube community page, but to find it easily, just go to my website, theskypriestess.com, click body of work. It's the top article, the deadly dance of Thereus and Nessus. If you look at it, I also make reference to some words by the chief exorcist of the Vatican. And honestly, I found out about this in a movie called The Conjuring 2, but I was curious, so I looked it up. And in it, he talks about the different stages of possession. Now, please don't think I necessarily am talking about ghosts and demons jumping on you in the middle of the night. It's the same logic of control dynamics that comes even when you're in an abusive relationship with a very physically present person. But the more effectively, the more you put your focus of attention onto something or someone else, even if there is something external disturbing you, the more you give attention to that, the more you empower that, the more obsessed you get with, oh my God, what's going to happen? What they're going to do, etc., 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 the more easily your will is invaded. And that is how Thereus gets the job done. The more you fear about it, the more you obsess over it, the easier you are to target. And you might ask, but you talk about Thereus so often, aren't you obsessed with it? Well, I look at it as often as I do any other astrological body. But the reason why I talk about or seem to talk about it more is because A, I am still recovering. So I don't have the time or the energy to talk about other things. I focus on what is the most important. So this is the information which is most important. And for some of you, it can be life-changing, even life-saving. And just as a general rule, there's also a lot of energy that's going to try to trigger you this month to just go and do random shit without really thinking it through. And the risk of injury is high. So even if you are going to do something like bungee jumping, make sure you go with someone who knows what they're doing, make sure the cord is tight, do all your safety checks, and then go live your life. Effectively, all of this is a reminder to watch your back, and if you don't know what's bugging you, to look deeper. One way or another, you are likely to find your answer. Now, then of course, the same applies for facilitation, divination, any kind of guidance. As there's everyone who provides a service does not necessarily go out there to intentionally cause harm to people. Sometimes they may do it totally unknowingly. I've had a few cases where people who went for a Reiki session from someone who seemed very nice, no issues there, suddenly found their energy full of stuff they never consented to let in the first place. And it's not just pinpointing on Reiki, it applies to everything. Astrology is a form of divination, tarot is a form of divination, runes are a form of divination. Any modality which opens up your energy to something larger. Going for an ayahuasca ceremony is a form of profound initiation. Whatever it is you do, you have to look at the modality you're using, whether or not it and the facilitator are aware of the back doors that it may have, and what they are doing to keep the space of facilitation safe. Unless you are very sure about who you're working with, this is not a month to be opening yourself up psychically to anybody or any substance. Even if it is a mushroom, I'm sure the mushroom doesn't mean to harm you, but if you don't know what you're doing with it and you just leave your energy field open and unprotected, there's a whole bunch of things waiting to come in. So you got to be really, really careful about this. But for those who are drawn to working with me at this time, I am doing a special offer this month, which I will also provide details for again, and you can find that information on my website. And it's for people who need a little bit of financial grace in being able to afford a session. I can't do much more beyond this because this work is very, very difficult and it takes a lot to ensure that each client is as safe as possible. People who work with me know that sometimes I might spend hours in cleanup. And they might have just happily gone on and continued with their whatever they're doing for the rest of the day, but I will still be there making sure that every single door that I can access is shut. So, oh, yes, Josh. Josh is making comments again. As you can hear, Josh is very vocal. So, for those of you who do want to work with me, there's an opportunity with discounted sessions for the 45-minute sessions. And you can find information on that on my website, which the booking link is theskypriestess.as.me. That's .as.me. You can find information on that, but only come to me if you are actually willing to look at things. If you want something gentle, do not come. If you want something that is going to give you a rose-tinted view of reality, please unfollow, walk the other direction. You will never get that here. In the comments that I was receiving from this troll, because even if someone actually has the gall to write that kind of bullshit on my webpage, there's got to be, an energy working through it. So I looked at it going, all right, what are you accusing me of? And the worst they could come up with is someone sad who lacks joy in their life and blah dee da dee da. I assure you, I probably have a lot more joy than a lot of people. And yet, I go through a lot. But that doesn't mean that just because something bad is happening to you or something is tough that you should lose connection with things that make you happy. But that doesn't mean that just focusing on joy is necessarily going to protect you either. So, there is this idea that if you just think positive things, bad things will never happen to you, and that is bull crap. Utter and absolute bull crap. And the people who say that very often are very strong guides, or very often have experiences that are going to kick them in the ass later in life. So whatever it is, whatever you're going through, whatever you're experiencing, respect your experience. Be willing to face what you can face at this time. You don't need to get all of it done immediately. We will still have a lot of opportunities to be working through the Nessus Thereus opposition, but the more you get done, the better. The reason for this is we are going to be looking forwards to Saturn moving into Pisces. We're going to be looking forwards to Pluto temporarily moving into Aquarius. We're going to be seeing the nodes shifting into Aries Libra this year. So there are plenty of energies that are wanting us to shift, to evolve, to transform. And you don't need to wait a year for all of this to be done. The more willing you are to shift the energy in the present, the less burdened the road will be. So, this is the kind of attitude that I take with things. You don't put it off, insofar as you can. Don't put it off. If you're utterly terrified and overwhelmed, then wait till you are grounded enough to face what you need to face. I mean, some of the most frustrating things that I have experienced in my journey is like figuring out, okay, did I do something? Because this is the thing that really pisses me off. Because my condition and situation was so esoteric, and I kept going to healers, and they kept pissing me off because they didn't have an answer. None of them had clearance to look into my aura, even though I said, here, look at what you need to look. So they couldn't really see what was going on with me, even though I said, yeah, okay, sure, have a look. But because they didn't know what was happening, all they ended up was gaslighting me, saying, this is your karma. This is because you did this and you did that. And I said, okay, so what did I do? Nobody could tell me. So even people who claim to be able to read the Akashic records were saying, we can't access anything on you. And I'm like, so in other words, you don't know, but no one really wants to admit that. And the thing that has really helped me, looking at whatever weirdness has surrounded me the past couple of years, the thing that has really helped me most of all, and what kind of scary shit I've faced, some of which I've told you. What has really helped me the most is really looking inside and looking at my innermost feelings. Even if it's a tiny feeling, even if it's a tiny little pain in a part of my body which I don't know why it's there, and to really go at it one step at a time. That is the only thing that has helped. And no, I haven't done any, grand scale BS to deserve this kind of stuff that I've been going through. But thankfully, the health situation is starting, fingers crossed. It's maintaining at a certain point of stability, and hopefully that'll just improve with time. But that has come, yes, in part due to people helping me through critical moments, but that has been managed and maintained through the fact that I have been willing to look at who I am and not to take in this idea that if I'm suffering, I'm obviously some terrible person. Josh. Josh is saying, yes, yes, I'm not a terrible person too. Yes, we're trying to drug Josh with catnip because he keeps going after his sisters and he's very, very attached to his balls. And yeah, let's just say he's a very male being who identifies strongly that way. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have much of a choice if the calming chewables don't work on him. But effectively, just don't allow yourself to be gaslit. That is something that I do have a certain degree of anger around, simply because I've been on the receiving end of that stick. And I can say honestly, I have never blamed a person who is suffering or a person who is in deep pain for something that they are enduring, even if it was something they did in a past life, because that attitude doesn't help. That creates this idea that we're here to experience pain when it's not really a necessary part of our journey. It's an old way of experiencing spirit. It's an old idea of sacrifice that is basically still being followed. But when we step into a different vision of healing and when we step into a different vision of spirituality, those experiences don't come up as often. So they know that's what I have found through hard work, through many years, walking the path, walking it, not just talking it. Now I do see a good question by Living Light. What are your recommendations for psychic hygiene, please? Well, it's very important. Obviously, you can work with external beings who protect. That depends on your belief system. You can work with crystals, of course, that they do have an effect, but if things are very strong, the crystals will break. I have seen that myself. But most importantly, the I would say for a facilitator of any kind, or even a person who's seeking facilitation, hygiene begins with your heart. Now, I've seen a lot of people just talk, pull stuff out of their butt that have no bearing in reality after they think that they've set all the right intentions. But their intention setting is coming from here. It's like saying, okay, I want all of this to be done. All of this is being done by this spirit. We are done. We can start the work right now. For me, that has never worked. People do that have never been able to hold a safe space for me. Whereas I see when people come with the intention of safety and love and compassion for themselves, for others from the heart, that is actually a far more powerful place to begin from when looking at psychic hygiene. Other basic tips would be, of course, to make sure you clear yourself in between sessions of clients. That's very, very important. And to also know when to rest and to not push yourself. That's so important, because if you are too tired and if you are too overburdened, or if you're just not feeling right, whether or not a person has paid money or not, it is better for you to push a session or just refund them than do something when they can both be compromised. Naomi says, your first talk put me on a search for more information on Thereus. Thank you. Most welcome. There's still not too much out there. I've looked at, and I have done like a review on what is out there, but not too many, not too many people talk about it, because it's hard to talk about without being projected on as being, doom and gloom and whatnot. Thereus can show you how to protect yourself if you actually take it seriously. But if you kind of bury your head in the sand and say, I only want to think about rainbows and la la land, oh, that's not going to work. Okay, so let's see what else. We have any other questions with respect to the stuff said? No. Do we have any questions with respect to what has been said for? Let me talk about some positives that we can also look forward to But just let's take a minute to field any questions that have come up with respect to the stuff I've talked about so far. Any questions? No? Okay. So let's look at some positivity in terms of very important days that you can really use to change significant relationships you have, even relationships with spirit. It's not meant to be stagnant. It's not meant to be one thing that stays the same lifetime after lifetime. But in the same way, people find it so hard to change their beliefs. Souls that have been doing a certain thing for a very long time find it very hard to change the way they do things. So, the same logic applies. I find that coming up, we're going to be seeing, just to keep it simple, we're going to be seeing February, I believe the 8th, the 12th, and the 16th, points of real change, real potential change. And there are three reasons for this. And, again, if you want the full details, you got to join the Tier 23 program. There is a lot of information, a lot. And I really have to be thankful to that program because the people who contributed and the people who contributed to through the GoFundMe helped me and my family. And we are so grateful, along with our 4 little cat babies who are also very naughty but also very psychic. So sometimes they want to sit in on sessions and they want to help people and they want to look at people, and it's great. Okay, before we get into that, we got a good question from Lisa. What if you already had the breakdown from the Thereus attack? How does one recover and move forward? Well, this is the thing. Unless the roots of the attack are uncovered, unless you have dealt with whatever that backdoor or allowance is. An allowance doesn't necessarily mean you sign something up there before incarnating and therefore it's okay here. It may simply be a belief, an emotion, a misguided idea that you've carried through the life cycles. The thing is, people like to deify whatever we experience as a soul, thinking that that has to be our script for the now, which is BS, BS, and even more BS. So first of all, yes, recovery is very important, but you got to close the door. If you keep finding yourself getting attacked by something, you have to ask yourself why. So my advice is deal with the door first. Otherwise, even if you recover, you're going to get pushed again. And Thereus is very active this month, especially vis-a-vis Mars, Thereus, Nessus, the great attractor, in a powerful grand mutable cross. Please go and check out that article of mine if you haven't. I'll be sharing all the links on my channel as well after I finish this video. Vernie says, there's this theme of shedding all identities is the expansion of the theme that you were just speaking of. Yes, we absolutely have to. We absolutely have to. Too many people, and this is why, if you notice, too many people like going back to the past. So they want to bring back this civilization. They want to bring back the glory of this race. They want to bring back the kings and queens and emperors and empresses. And I go, why? Why do you need all of that stuff? If that was the spiritual model that needed to be on the planet, then that would be on the planet. That would be part of the new wave of consciousness. But it's not. It just brings back more of the old and the parts of the old that we have actually glorified. And we don't need any of that stuff. Spirit doesn't care if you have a crown or not. It really doesn't. And it doesn't care whether you seem powerful or not. That's not how it works. At least that's not what I've seen. Alicia asks, I'm always asking why, then I ask why not. Well, that's a part. If you can ask, why am I being attacked? Why is this happening to me? Not necessarily in a... Hang on. This thing, Ariel needs my help again. Josh, you better not be doing anything weird. But, here we go. I see her now. So you can start with the question of why is this happening? And then you can move to the question of how is this happening? If why not helps you get to a space of being safe, that's fine. That's up to you. But if the question of why not makes you legitimize negative things that are happening to you in terms of pain or in terms of cycles of abuse, then you have to find something that works. So ultimately, go with what helps you come to a bigger space within yourself that is safe, not just for you, but for people around you. So, each individual will have, they will have different ways of doing it, and I'm not going to say my way is the most absolute way. So, let's see. Now, moving to dates of possibility. The 8th I like, and where I am, it's already the 8th. We see Vesta will be entering Aries. And I like this. Vesta is very much the energy of the sacrificial priestess. She goes too hard. She either goes to she either goes too deep into devotion, or she runs away from it and renounces it entirely. So she's about those extremes. And of course, people will romanticize it saying it's just one thing, when it could be both. We do need to let go of what doesn't work. And sometimes we do need to plunge with everything in. But it's never a static state. Vesta entering Aries, where it will be between February the 8th to April the 15th, is going to be about finding a path of service where you can actually be yourself, where you don't have to erase yourself, where you don't have to be smaller than who you are. You also don't have to feel the pressure of having to expand to become greater or whatever, where being yourself is already the path of service. That's not really, that's not necessarily, Dwayne Johnson as Maui saying, "You're welcome just for existing." It's not going that far. But it's about seeing actual embodiment, seeing being truthful, honest, and authentic as the path. So I like the possibilities of Vesta and Aries, but of course there are some people who are going to take it as an invitation to self-erasure. If you weren't meant to be some version of a self, why would we even be here? Would be my question, you know? So I would say, given what we've talked about in terms of the experience and the prejudices that can come through past experiences, it is which self. Mind that sometimes you can't heal everything. Sometimes you have to dissolve it. Sometimes it can be reintegrated, and sometimes it is better to let go of things. So this is a big possibility, a big change in the energy coming February the 8th, which of course is also a day where you still need to look at major triggers to Thereus and Nessus. So there are these opportunities alongside these major triggers. The next day, which I would say is another big opportunity kind of day, is Neptune conjunct Okyrhoe. Okyrhoe is the daughter of Chiron and Chariklo. And Okyrhoe is a very powerful prophetess. She's able to know the future of people that just by looking at them, before they even reach out, she'll run up to them and say, "Hey, hey, hey, this is what's going to happen to you." Because at that time, in that system, the gods, for example, Apollo, was deeply, deeply patriarchal. They wanted to control when people would know their destinies. Because honestly, if people knew what the plan was at a certain point of time, they may decide to do something differently. A person who understands what the plan is for now may actually choose to go do something else, which is one of the reasons why Apollo turned Okyrhoe into a mare. And so she was muted. Personally, I would see Okyrhoe as equivalent to Prometheus, as a champion of humanity in her own right. But is she seen that way? No, because she's a woman. But ultimately, we see on February the 12th, we see Neptune at 23 degrees Pisces, conjunct Okyrhoe. This is a very good time to be looking at the parts of our own kingdom that have been suppressed, that have been silenced, especially if we were certain genders, if we were certain sexualities, if we had wombs or not. That was all of these absolutely arbitrary reasons for discounting a particular type of wisdom, which we can largely say a feminine sense of consciousness. Beings like these were hunted, beings like these were shut down, and so many of us seeking a reconnection with self have experienced this sort of being forcibly muted. So these kinds of energies will be coming up around February the 12th, and some integrated, some things are to be acknowledged and sent back up. February the 16th, or sent into the earth, whichever your paradigm is. February the 16th, we see the Sun at 27 degrees of Aquarius, conjunct Saturn, and those two are sextiling the galactic center. And actually, we do see a similar alignment before that, with Saturn doing the same thing with the galactic center on February the 11th, the same day that Mercury enters Aquarius. So you can also add February 11th to another day of great potential change. February 11th and February 16th see Saturn, the Sun, and the galactic center in aspect to one another. And this is really when you can kind of go to spirit and go, you know what? These ideas that have kind of put me on this road of sacrifice for the greater good, they don't work. They absolutely do not work, and I want to do things differently. I mean, it's the sacrifice of the sacred feminine is kind of what has brought this planet to this space right now. So, sacrificing the innocent doesn't work. And yet, people keep doing it. And yet, people keep telling their spiritualists and their healers that that's the way it's got to be done. And that's another load of BS. So, especially February the 11th, February the 16th, look at you vocalizing what kind of relationship you want to have with spirit, what vision of spirituality you want to walk with at this time, whether you're a seeker, whether you're a facilitator, and give yourself permission to be that. Now, if you have anything near the 27th degree of Cancer, that will then become a yod or a finger of fate. So that potential yod ultimately helps us look at what parts and ideas of service and facilitation bring us to a sense of home. Now, I mean, being someone who has done this in the past as well, very often people identify home with a certain sense of, this civilization, this culture, this language, this religion, this ethnicity, but that's not where our souls come from. They come from different origins. It doesn't even have to be saying it come from this ET civilization or that planet. No, we all come from stardust. Your soul's absolute origins have no label. And in that sense, one of the biggest and most inspirational experiences that we can have on this journey is to really feel that sense of resonance of what is home for the soul. Some cultures, some lands may bring it out more, but that's not truly where you're from. Just bear that in mind. So, whatever road you take, let it come back to the true home of the spirit, which I would say, again, the biggest access point is the heart and going deeper and deeper within it. So, that's a quick review. I normally do this for each month because it takes energy and it takes a lot of psychic work to do. But this was an important one because, again, Thereus related alignments can potentially be life threatening. So, better say it and give people a bit of a heads up. So, having said that, let's see. Hey, and getting hugs. Carolina says, Thereus plays a big part in my chart, so I'm wary about these red flag days. It seems to hit my sun too if it doesn't get me directly. Now, that's a very, very good point. And that's why when I work with people who have babies, including fur babies, because fur babies will gladly do the whole Kevin Costner bodyguard bit for you, which I do not allow them to do. But they try, but that's not why they're here as far as I'm concerned. But irrespective of what species your child is, when various alignments are coming because of some kind of metaphysical force, and sometimes that force is your own ancestry. Sometimes, if it can't reach you directly, it will go through the next best thing. And Ariel is also chiming in the background. She doesn't like this topic either, so she likes sitting with her uncle. But effectively, it is not enough to just look at your own safety, especially if you have people around you who are vulnerable, people who are under your care, or people who are simply very psychically sensitive. They may also then absorb the hit for you, especially if they have an overdose of empathy going on. So that is a very important point that Carolina has also raised. But again, this is more for a metaphysical source of origin for oppression that can arise through Thereus cycles. Or in this case, it could be Nessus playing about in Pisces. So yes, there's a lot of information. Again, look at the article, make the most of the special offer that I have, which you do need to redeem by February the 15th if you are looking to work with me at this time. But you got to look at if you're actually willing, which is another big part of the big requirement in the work. Alicia says that their ancestry is profound and confusing, but it certainly explains a few things. It's, yeah, it's a mixed bag for a lot of people. So let's put it that way. So do we have any questions, or shall I wrap this up? Because this has been a fairly long video and I do need to rest. Giving you a couple of secs. Otherwise, I can go and wind this up. No, I don't see anything. So, okay, oh, hang on. So, everyone, you're most welcome. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for being present. So I'm going to wrap it up now and, go back to the very beginning. If you want to figure out what all of this is about, again, look at the article, check out the sessions, and those of you who want to contribute via my PayPal, you are always more than welcome to do so, because this be heavy work. And I'm going to go and put all of the links as soon as I finish this video. Radha has a quick question. Quickly, what is it? What is the question, dear? Radha asks, does this all have to do with more earthquakes, etc.? That is a very good question, and I will actually take the time to answer this one. This one, I would say, is not directly related to Thereus and Nessus, but it is a very good question to ask. Very, very good question. The reason why I would say, and this is again something that I do usually I do cover in the Tier 23 program, this I would actually say has to do more so with Typhon. Typhon was known as the great serpentine monster of the earth, which I believe, mythologically speaking, I think it's supposed to be at the base of Mount Etna. But what I have noticed is that whenever there is a strong aspect to Typhon in the skies, we do see things stirring up big time. Typhon at this time is at 23 degrees of Scorpio, meaning it is directly trined to Neptune in the skies, who is in a similar degree of the sign of Pisces. So Typhon is literally being stirred. That great being within the earth is being stirred at this time. And this is one of those spaces where the sheer weight of old energies that have been held through ancestry can come up in profound ways. Now, have I figured out a way to predict this in a practical sense? No, and I'm not going to look into value my freedom. That might be slightly too dangerous knowledge to focus on. But Typhon would be the one behind it. Jane says, we're learning so much about the centaurs, we're still learning what they mean. Yes, because first of all, I feel like they really should look at their naming process. I really think they should look at their naming process, because we could use some good centaurs, we could use some more positive asteroids and so on and so forth. But yes, we are learning, we are continuing to learn, and we need to take them a lot more seriously, because astrology is so much more than the basic planets. So much more than that. But at the same time, you can know thousands of asteroids, but if you don't know how to work with them in practice, that knowledge is also meaningless. So you got to look at experience, and you got to look at knowledge, and you look at learning, and you look at learning the job, and that's how things go. So that wraps it up. Take care. Very many blessings to all of you. Just check back on my YouTube channel in a sec, and I'll have all of those links I mentioned for you. Take care. Stay safe. Very many blessings. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.